whereas women comprise now approximately 50% of the entering classes of associates at law firms, and yet they still are in the minority, the distinct minority, when we get up into the partner levels. And I just don't buy the argument anymore that women hadn't entered the legal force and therefore we shouldn't be seeing them in the partnership levels, because women have been in the legal classes 30-40% for the past 15 years. And so we should be seeing those same types of numbers in the partnership levels at the highest levels of in-house counsel, general counsel, and we're just not.
Women are always fighting the obstacles that are put up to women generally in our society, regardless of the numbers that people throw back at us and say, well, look at, almost half the starting associates, for instance, are women. But then, when you go higher and higher, it gets lesser or thinner and thinner as to the ranks. So as an Asian, I would think that there are, you have to fight the old boys network. I think that's just a very ever-present reality.
In terms of the progress that women have not made, I think if anyone looks back to 1995, when I taped the earlier interview, and you look at where we are now as women lawyers, I don't think we've made the strides that we should have made in the almost 20 years that have passed.
In 1995, I felt the opportunities for Asian American women were limited, but now I have seen many opportunities that are available for the women attorneys. And at the same time, there are many Asian American attorneys who are in a very powerful positions, who can do much mentoring and advocacy to many of the new attorneys that graduated now.
When I wanted to go to law school, I didn't know any Asian American female lawyers. So it was a leap for me to try to do that. Nonetheless, it didn't deter me. I think I became more determined. And it was something that, frankly, I didn't even think about, because similarly, when I wanted to become a judge, there were few Asian American judges. I think the lesson is that even when you don't see people who look like you, nonetheless, you can still achieve.
For one thing, I think Asian American women have the double penalty of being a minority and a woman. So Asian American women aren't the traditional face of leadership. It takes a little more time, I think, for other people to recognize the leadership, because they're not used to seeing that.
I believe that our culture, the Asian culture, really encourages women to be a little bit more submissive and quiet and more deferential. And I think that that is in opposition to some of the qualities that you need as a litigator.
I was so good at following rules, because I had been brought up, with the message, never rock the boat. Just keep your head down, keep working very hard, and it's a pure meritocracy, so hard work is going to be rewarded. But when you land in the corporate context, you look around and nobody's telling you that it's 5 points to have lunch with that partner and 3 points to play squash with that guy, and so on and so forth.
And I think somehow we don't see ourselves necessarily in the role of running things or being in charge or making the decisions. And I think we have to change that mindset about ourselves. I think at some level it's contrary to some Asian values I think that many of us grow up with.
Especially minority women in particular really need to look out for each other, but that it can't stop there. And I think the next phase, those efforts need to remain ongoing, but of crucial importance is getting the buy-in of the current leadership. You do need the majority Caucasian male leadership to undertake this as a priority. The easiest way of doing that is to make the business case of why diversity is important.
Very well-meaning, very senior HR executives at my book events actually say to me, sometimes I don't know whether Asian Americans are just happier being the worker bees. A statement which obviously is wrong on so many levels, it's very difficult to know where to begin. It's that sort of foreignness and outsider status still assigned to the Asian American group that I think means that we will see more significant progress sooner on the side of women attorneys than on the side of Asian American attorneys in the next 10 years.
And the reason it took me so long to finally get to the bench is I never really thought it would happen. It was not part of my vision of where my career would be because I really didn't see any people like myself on the bench, nor did I have any idea of how people got there. I think it's a very Asian mentality, as I've mentioned before, to just think if you work hard, you'll be plucked out of obscurity just because you've been working hard. And you have to accept that it doesn't work that way and that you have to actually go after it yourself.
For the last 19 years in my private practice, I started to see many of my clients who came to retain me, not because of my gender, but because of my competency and my bilingual skills and the understanding of their cultures. So I think that at this time, comparing to 1995, I believe that the clients now becoming very noticeable of women attorneys and respect them very much.
So the answer has to be multifaceted, really. We have to change the look of boardrooms, we have to change the look of law firms, we have to change the look of the general counsels across this country. I think it's happening, and I take a lot of comfort in the fact that every year when I go to the Asian Bar Conference, there are more and more women who are in positions of significance and power, who are becoming general counsels or who are becoming CEOs. It's slow, but it is at least steady and moving in the right direction.
In any law firm, every associate partner, legal assistant is being judged by the others. His or her competence is being judged by his or her peers. But for a woman, it's not that she's being judged only on her credentials, on her legal capacity, but it normally boils down to very personal things. I mean, a woman is being judged for the way she dresses, the way she behaves, the people she moves around with. So the judgment tends to get very personal and nasty for a woman, and that's one thing I think every woman has to watch out for.
When I first started practicing, people would refer to me as girl, thinking that I was in the court as somebody's secretary, doing something other than what I was really there to do. And when they found out that I was in fact a lawyer, the same as themselves, well, they had to really reorganize their thinking.
I often get asked whether during my career I witnessed, bias, discrimination. There are fewer and fewer instances I have observed in my own career when I walk into a boardroom and the client automatically assumes that I'm the secretary or paralegal and acts surprised when they learn that actually, no, I'm the lawyer. I think the instances that still do happen of stereotyping are much more subtle and therefore even harder to put your finger on and identify. Sometimes when these instances of unconscious or implicit bias are so subtle, it's very, very difficult to explain why they matter.
In my first election, I experienced a lot of racism. For example, I was called chinky, chinky, chinky to my face. And your first instinct is to say, what? And maybe to cry, because you're running for judge. You're not expecting racism to come at that level. And nonetheless, it made me stronger. At the point in time I was called chinky, 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 I just worked twice as hard to win that election.
An example would be going for a law firm interview and having the partner sit there and really explain to me how I shouldn't feel uncomfortable because their firm often worked against the Chinese government. And that, to me, I was really upset about that because my resume has the US Senate on it, it has the New York City Council on it, and if he had just taken a look at that for 10 seconds, I think it would have been clear that it wouldn't have been an issue for me.
I do remember when I was a summer associate interviewing for a position within a large law firm, interviewing with an older white partner who kept wanting to talk about Asia corporate practice. And I remember thinking, what about my resume makes you think that I'd be interested in Asia corporate practice? Because at the time I was a law student, so I didn't have an extensive work experience, but my work experience to that point had been working at the Manhattan DA's office, interning at the Federal Defenders for Legal Aid, and teaching at a school in Harlem. And so I remember thinking, I'm not really interested in Asia corporate practice. And then to top it off, at the end of the interview, I remember he was talking about how he was successful in working in Asia because he knew how the Vietnamese thought, or he knew how the Chinese thought, and as long as you sort of stroke their ego and make them feel like they know what they're doing, it makes for a much more successful work experience. And I remember thinking, thank you for that.
It's sometimes difficult for, I think, particularly maybe the older generation to view upon first impression women as being in the room as something other than a paralegal or a legal assistant, a secretary, somebody bringing in the refreshments. And as an Asian, it's almost a double whammy in some respects, because I think that there are certain stereotypes about Asian women in particular that have been in existence largely because of films, media over a long period of time that show Asian women as being docile, as being obedient.
It's hard to be a forceful woman or a confident, aggressive woman without crossing over the line of being perceived as overly aggressive or shrill or nasty or obnoxious. That doesn't exist if you think about men in the same position. No one ever says that man is overly aggressive or he's a bully. Men can be bullies, and women cannot necessarily occupy that same space.
In my practice of law, I didn't feel too different because I was a woman, but I think that's mainly because of the settings that I was in. So my first job was in the Bronx Family Court as a litigator, and in family court, normally there are a lot of women attorneys, so we didn't have that many male attorneys. And so I was surrounded by other women attorneys, judges, some judges were women. And then when I moved over to the Minkwon Center, also in the public interest, there are a lot of women attorneys.
It has been 19 years and more since that first conversation, and I think the legal profession has changed a lot. National boundaries are blurring. I have changed a lot. I was back then new to the US, new to New York, new to the legal profession. And I feel that now I have a bit more experience, much more self-confidence, a little more subject matter expertise, and have a better read on some people. So I now think that people do not rush to judgment merely based on your nationality or your gender. It is much more subtle than that. I think people do make first impressions depending on how you dress and how you present yourself. Accent may play a small role. People may think you're more like them if your accent is closer to American English. But these are small things. I think at the end of the day, people are really judged by the quality of their work they do.
My plan is, if I were to have children, I would leave the practice of law at least for the first 2 years. It may be an extension of my cultural upbringing, but as important as my career is to me, I think my child would come first. It's really hard for me to say, because I think every beginning attorney, starts out with these aspirations that I can handle my career, I can handle raising children, but I think in reality, it's extremely hard. I don't know. I mean, time will tell. I think right now, if I had to, I'm willing to take off time and leave the practice of law, at least temporarily.
First is the fact that women have to make certain decisions about their family life that men don't have to make, about whether they're going to have children and when they're going to have them, and if they do, what are they going to do about their career.
Decide what you want, and then set about getting it all done. But you have to understand at any one time that you cannot, it's not, to me, life is almost like a seesaw, and that there's only a certain amount of a space, and when one side goes up, the other side goes down, and you can't perfectly balance your career and family all the time. One side is going to have to give, and the question is what side at any time.
In 1995, the concept of work-life balance really was not relevant to me. I was brand new to the legal profession. I was married, but I was married to, and I'm still married to, a busy lawyer. I did not have children, so I was either working or I was enjoying some personal time. My priority back then was to build my practice and keep my job. So the balance issue never came up. But eventually I had 2 kids and I discovered that I have 2 full-time jobs.
I think we're in a much, much better position than we were 10 years ago. However, honestly, I think the fact that women have a uterus will forever complicate things. There are fields of law that are just difficult for women to be able to handle having a family, and having what's usually primary responsibility for taking care of a child.
My last year that I was in private practice, I was pregnant with my first child, and we were working on a major case. And I was required to be in the office for a period of 36 hours. I was enormously pregnant. And I was thinking, these are the needs of the firm, this is the needs of the client, and this is what the practice is. But I can't sustain this type of practice if I'm going to have a family. And I knew that entering academia would make it easier for me to start my family and raise my family the way that I would want to raise my family.
A good example that I've seen is we have an annual holiday party at our firm, and I asked one of my female partners if she was planning to attend, and she said, no, it's my daughter's recital. And that for me was a very nice and defining moment, in the sense of, for her, it's very important to be a successful woman and to be a successful partner to bring in clients. But it's also very important for her to decide when she wants to prioritize her family over, let's say, a networking event within the firm.
So I think it's something I'll have to figure out later on. But I am happy whenever I go to firm events or when there's recruiting, when it seems like work-life balance is stressed more and more, and that women's committees do talk about it, and that to me is a sign of progress.
I don't think that my career plan, now that I have children, has necessarily changed. I have the good fortune of being in a job and being a public interest attorney that affords me control over my workday and flexibility. So I don't see that changing quite a bit. The change that I do see is that I'm very involved in a lot of other community organizations outside of work, and I'm struggling right now and still figuring out how I'm going to balance my after-work activities and my desire to really stay involved in those organizations and to take an active part in their activities in the evenings, on the weekends, with balancing having a child and wanting to prioritize my family.
At this point, I've been back at work for about 5 months after having the baby, and I have to just say it's really, really difficult. I don't know if there's another answer to this question, and I don't have a good solution. And no one's been able to really give me an answer, I think, besides just saying that they just do it and they sleep less. And so I think one thing that is really helpful is I have a very supportive husband, and I think without his support, I don't think I can actually do this job and be a mom at the same time. I think it would be completely impossible to do this job without his support.
I think there needs to be a transformation at every single level in order to improve work-life balance. I think at the personal level, we need to demand more from our partners so that there's a more equal distribution of child-rearing responsibilities. I think we need to demand more of our institutions and our government for helping parents take care of family members, take care of children, whether it's in the form of flex time or being able to work from home or be able to work part-time or to provide tax credits.
The key is to be able to communicate well with your employer or your colleagues to make sure that they are aware of the situation, that you prioritize your work, that this entire part-time job or balancing this is completely seamless for the client, and just trying to make sure that you're doing the best you can, whether you're working for 10 hours a week or 40 hours. I'm
seeing women judges, I'm seeing women general counsels of firms, I'm seeing more women partners. So for me, it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to another 10 years where women continue to partake and establish themselves as leaders in the legal industry.
And we are seeing a lot more people, a lot more Asian women attorneys running organizations, running programs. And I think that our presence in those roles inspires younger women, and I hope that they will choose to pursue that path and define success in different ways. That success isn't always defined in becoming a partner at a law firm or making a lot of money. Success could also be defined in terms of the impact that you have on making the world a better place.
The law is a slowly changing institution, and I don't see great market advances coming probably in the next decade or even in the next 2 decades. I think it will be slow and incremental. So if we define advances and progress for women or women of color just through that lens, I think that we would be frustrated by those numbers. But if we expand our definition of progress and advancement to these other areas, whether judicial or legislative, then we can see advancement, and that is a really positive change. And so I think that we need to recognize the many ways that Asian female attorneys can have an impact, not just in practice, but through academia and through politics, through activism.
And in one way that I've seen it personally is that partners in large firms generally tend to be white men, and they want to mentor people who look like them. So when they're looking at the associates and thinking, who do I want to help in terms of advancing his or her career, they're going to choose the white man. They're going to think of the person they were 20 years before, or they're going to think of their own sons and people that they're going to want to promote and assist and advance.
Early on, you should associate with people who, obviously like your work and can be your mentor. I think mentoring is very important. And that's true for anybody in order to make partner. I think you need those people who are your cheerleaders, who are senior to you and who can, help you as an individual to develop your career that makes sense from a business point of view, because law firms are businesses, as well as doing the good work so that you are recognized by your mentors. Always good to have more than one, too.
Outside of the firm as well, I think having a mentor is very important, and you can speak with that mentor about maybe the issues that you're having within the firm and other ways that you should progress your career. Another thing that I think women can do is they can start networking, getting involved in different organizations.
I have a long history with Asian American Bar Association. I'm one of the founding members of the Asian American Bar Association. I served on the first interim board and then on the first elective board. And the reasons why we started the Asian American Bar Association way back then, still prevalent today. It offers an opportunity for members to network, and it offers an opportunity to have our community be advocated for by the Asian American Bar Association. So it's very important for Asian American women because the Asian American Bar Association can certainly be an advocate for them as litigators and also for our community.
We need help. We need help from each other, which is something that I don't actually see enough of. It's been a strange pattern, at least in my experience, and I think sometimes from the generational standpoint, you might have women who are more senior in age who have struggled much harder than we currently have to experience right now. And so there's some women I've seen who seem to have this mentality of younger women needing also to suffer or to experience the kinds of challenges that they challenge, and that's the only way that we will learn. I don't think that will get us to where we need to be anytime soon.
I remember going to a client meeting where before walking into the meeting, my senior said, "You're going to be sitting at the table And if you're sitting at the table, then that means that you need to add something fruitful so that you can come sit at the table again. And for me, that was a very, also kind of a shining moment for me in the sense that, you know, a senior male attorney, 2 senior male attorneys, partners at my firm, are giving me the opportunity to sit at the table. And now they're saying, okay, you're here at the table, shine. And if you shine, you're going to get another chance. So I think that the opportunities are being created for women, and it's just a function of us jumping on those opportunities and making, you know, really being ourselves and being the best we can be to become a part of the leadership in the legal industry.
My advice to new attorneys, women, Asian women, is don't think that what you do next, right out of law school, is going to define your career. You have a very long career ahead of you. What you should do is you should always pursue the thing that you want to do and not get too caught up in all the things that will happen thereafter. I'm not saying don't be strategic about your career, but I think some people get so wedded to a particular plan they overlook the serendipity of things that happen. Be open to serendipity and look for those opportunities when they come along and be willing to take a chance.
Don't self-select out. Don't be too hard on yourself when you're looking for jobs. I feel that Asian female attorneys are often very hard on themselves and look at job descriptions and take themselves out of the running because they think, I don't have the requisite years of experience, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the language fluencies. But I always tell people, let the employers make that decision. When you have the job offer, then you can think about whether this job is actually appropriate for you.
The time to learn is at the beginning. And by the same token, don't be afraid to make mistakes or don't dwell on the mistakes. Learn from the mistakes for sure. Accept the notion everybody makes mistakes, even if they don't talk about it. But you have to learn from it and grow from it and not just dwell on it.
And stand up for yourself and be your own advocate when you need to be. You don't have to be a spokesperson for your nation every single time, but you have to be your own advocate. And you need to fix things that you think are important to you.
For Asian women who are law students, my advice would be to partake in as many public speaking opportunities and do the best you can to refine soft skills that are important to being a litigator.
So my advice for people who want to be judges is to believe in yourself and to seize the moment. Do not let the naysayers take over, because there will be naysayers. And if you don't fully believe in yourself, if you're not fully confident, pretend that you are, because that's half the battle.
I think that to succeed and advance in any profession, and particularly in the legal profession, as a woman of color, you have to understand that that is the position from which you begin, but that it's only a beginning, and that there will very well be biases against you and assumptions made about you. But ultimately, in the final analysis, as is true with any attorney, are you serving your client well? Can you get the job done? And so if you can prove your worth, then ultimately it won't matter that you are Asian or female. You're just an attorney, and a really good one.
The advice that I would give to someone who's starting out in their legal career is to work hard, but more importantly, to be able to express yourself. Speak, scream, yell if you have to, but be heard. See yourself as an active participant of your surroundings, of what's going on, whether it's a meeting, whether you're in the courtroom or in the boardroom.